So we're a technology company, we're not a transportation provider. At the moment, we connect riders to drivers at a touch of a button, making it easier and more affordable for people to move around their city and creating more economic opportunity for drivers in the cities where we operate. What's important about disruption is that you question the status quo, because you're not going to cause disruption without questioning the way that people are currently doing things. And I think that's part of the reason why Uber is successful, and it's extremely important that to continue to be successful in the future, we continue to question the status quo, whether it's our own beliefs as a company or whether it's what's generally accepted out there. So what we see with that is that supply actually leads demand. And if you think about the experience of someone requesting a ride using Uber in a market, if you open up the Uber application and you see a 20 or 25-minute wait time, or even worse, you don't see a vehicle available, you're not going to request a ride. You're probably going to drive yourself or make another plan. So what we see is that the more supply there is, the lower the wait time. So you go from 20 minutes to 15 to 10 or 5 minutes or less. And when we reach that point of being reliable, no matter where you are in a city, we can get a vehicle in 5 minutes or less using the application. We see higher demand for the product because people know they can rely upon Uber as a public transport solution in their cities. I think it's really about convenience and accessibility. If people know that something is reliable, if the system works, if it's efficient, if it's seamless, then the demand for the product will be there. Obviously, everything within reason. We can't have a franchise on every street corner, but the more easier it is for someone to access a product, whether that's by more franchise locations or ensuring that it's easier to get your product to your consumer, reducing those barriers to purchase, the more accessible it becomes, I do believe the higher the demand will be for the product. So I think that goes to questioning the status quo or what we believe as a company. What we've seen in South Africa wasn't the first market for Uber globally to launch cash. What we've seen in other markets where we launched cash was that it increases the number of people signing up and taking rides for Uber because Uber becomes more accessible to more people. What we were seeing in South Africa was a large number of people signing up and just never taking rides. And obviously people sign up, they provide their contact information. We then reach out to these people and try and understand, why are you not taking a ride with Uber? And part of that reason is sometimes they either don't feel comfortable providing their credit or check card information online, or they don't have access to a credit or check card. So what's important is that we reduce those barriers, going back to the previous point, and make Uber as accessible as possible for people. Another interesting point and a question that we often get, does cash not increase the risk to drivers and potentially riders on the platform? And this is an important one. And based on data that we have so far in South Africa, but also obviously the data that we had before we launched here, is that there's no data to suggest that there's a higher incident rate between riders and drivers for cash trips. And there's not a higher incident rate in that city. Let's take an example of robbery, that drivers become bigger targets after the introduction of cash. It's also important that we manage risks. We've got a partnership with FNB where drivers can deposit cash in ATDs around the country 24/7 if they feel uncomfortable carrying large amounts of cash. In addition to that, we also just tell drivers, if you have petty cash with you, use it to cover your daily operating expenses so you don't feel vulnerable carrying cash with you. So Uber Pool's a really exciting innovation. We don't have the product launched here in South Africa yet. No firm plans to launch a product yet. But what Uber Pool does, if you think about two people who are leaving at a similar time of day, if you think about your daily commute, I'm sure you notice a car that leaves at a similar time of day from a similar location and heads in a similar direction. Imagine using technology, we can connect those two people. So instead of having two vehicles, two people, we can have one vehicle and 2 or 3 or 4 passengers. And what that does, it reduces the costs of that ride for consumers because you're splitting the fare with someone. Yes, there may be a detour, but there's a huge cost saving. If you think about that from a driver's perspective, demand for their services are higher because prices are lower. In addition to that, they're spending fewer kilometers driving to pick up a passenger. So there are fewer dead kilometers in the system, and they're maximizing the amount of time that they spend carrying fare-paying passengers on the system. So Uber Eats is really exciting. I am excited to say that we will be launching that soon in South Africa. Imagine you sitting in the office on a busy day, you don't have time to pop down to the canteen, or you're tired of the canteen, or on a Sunday night you just don't feel like making your dinner. Imagine you can open up the Uber Eats application, browse the menu of your favorite restaurant with great pictures, and select exactly what you want and have that delivered to your door and charged to your card on file, all within 35 minutes. So that, we feel, is the next big disruption opportunity. The interesting part about that is that restaurants that are using the Uber Eats application are doing more revenue through the Uber Eats application than they are through their traditional brick and mortar restaurants. So what it starts to bring into question is the need for a brick and mortar restaurant. A storefront's probably your most expensive cost as a restaurant. Can you just have a virtual kitchen and can be in any location and then rely upon Uber to connect you to your customer base, minimizing your cost base and maximizing your potential revenue? It's not too different. It's just a different user experience, and hopefully the reliability will be there in getting you that meal in 35 minutes or less. The Uber Russia API, another exciting innovation. No firm plans to launch that yet. Will probably come sometime after we launch Uber Eats in South Africa. But what that will allow you to do is open up a web page as a business. Think about like a small business where it is a huge cost to invest in a delivery service. You can open up this dashboard. You can select the number of items that you want to be collected and enter your customers' delivery locations. What will then happen would the closest Uber driver partner would be contacted. They would then come collect the item on your behalf, and your customer would be able to track all of that using a link to the Uber trip. So it really makes delivery more accessible for small businesses. And again, we think this is a huge product innovation for small businesses, for e-commerce websites, for restaurants that potentially don't want to be on the Uber Eats app, but want to leverage a delivery network.